How do we start? How do we start? How do we start a podcast?
I think we have to go with "Hey guys" of some variable.
What's going on, podcasters? Sure, why not? This is all going in.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, start an intro. All right, intro.
You're getting there.
What?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the first episode of the Emo Social Club Podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Lizzie.
And yeah, we are bringing you this podcast.
It's here for the masses of niche emo and pop punk kids all alike. Or if you just have no idea what the hell an emo kid is, here we are.
Here we are. We look great. Yeah, so a little bit about this podcast. We are fans of emo culture and subculture.
If you couldn't tell.
But I'm old and have been doing this for, years now. Too many years. And Lizzie, you're younger.
I am.
And you're more connected to
the resurgence of emo, sort of.
Yeah, current 2018 emo. So we wanted to record about us and what emo is like nowadays, how emo is resurging, how emo was in the day, and then just sort of like talk about how that's affecting people in real world now.
With real world scenarios.
Yeah. I would say that we're gonna dive into some other stuff besides just like music culture and bands and sort of the history of things, and like get into more of like what is affecting our society, what's affecting our culture, what's affecting the people that are listening to this music, and just sort of tie it all back together. Did that make any sense?
It's sort of like we're gonna have different topics. So you know, in our scene, it's a really big phenomenon to be talking about depression, suicide, etc., and so on. But we'll also be talking about other issues that maybe people don't cover, like the healthcare reform and those types of issues, or talking about activism and like gun violence or something like that. So we're going to try to bring that in while also talking about the scene and how it influences it, and how the different bands that we listen to or artists that we listen to discuss it or don't discuss it, and just how it overall affects everyone in general.
Yeah, that was a much better summary.
There you go.
She gets it. This first episode, I think we're going to keep it a little bit lighter. We'll talk about Brendon Urie and Panic at the Disco, who just played in Chicago last night.
Yeah, it's a fan favorite.
And we'll also discuss the final Warped Tour run, which is coming through Chicago this weekend.
Very tragic.
Sure. So we'll kind of just keep it light for this episode, but we will dive into some more I think things that people want to talk about, things that people want to hear more in the media being discussed, and something that relates more to the people that are going through it. But we will we'll stay light on this episode.
Yeah.
All right, but let's talk a little bit about ourselves.
Whoa.
Right?
Well, you did say that
Why are we?
You did say you are old.
Yeah.
So I feel like people need to know what that entitles. Exactly.
What being old is?
Yeah.
It's just,
you have to define what old is.
You can't hang, and just everything's falling apart.
Okay. That sounds really bad and awful.
We're going to get really heavy now. No.
I don't think I want to get old, Brian.
It sucks. Let's talk a little bit about ourselves. Why are we here? Who are we? Why are we like this? So I'm Brian. I am the singer of a emo nostalgia band called Taking Back Emo, which is sort of the reason that we are connected for this, as Lizzie is also working with Taking Back Emo. We came up with the idea of doing this Emo Social Club as sort of a community within and around the band, around the people that have been hanging out with us. Sharing in the shows, sharing in our news articles or things that are coming up. We have a lot of memes going back and forth.
The most important thing, obviously.
It's a strong meme game. So I wanted to do something else with the band besides just covering all the old music that I used to listen to. I wanted it to be more of like building around the people that were in my life or are, I've like reconnected with a ton of friends from doing this band from back in high school. And we're all just coming together again over the same music that we listened to back in 2005 through 2008, around there.
2005, I think I was in like 6th grade, maybe. Okay. Maybe younger.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Carlos and I just put our hand, rubbed our faces like, oh boy.
You know what? I'm always here to make you feel old.
Thanks.
That's what I do for everyone.
I should say 2005 or 2008 were not my high school years. Those were my college years. So.
I started high school in 2008, 2009.
I'm weak. Cool. So, great.
So I'm Lizzie to go off of that. I'm clearly not as old as Brian. I am 23. I did a lot of, I did college radio. So I've done interviews for like Warped Tour and Riot Fest and other smaller bands in the area beforehand. Now I also work in promotions at a larger radio station here in the Chicago area. And I also work with, obviously, Taking Back Emo, and I also do talent buying for a smaller music venue around here, too. So it's definitely trying to interweave everything that I really like and have experience in and love to do in putting it into a more media accessible format and also having a dialogue to discuss certain issues that you try to open up with people in conversation, especially in the scene, and maybe they aren't super well versed on it or they just don't want to say anything because they don't want to offend anybody, which I totally get. So this is going to be another platform to hopefully jumpstart those conversations so we can begin more dialogue and back and forth discussion on certain subjects that I feel like we should be addressing. I mean, if personally for me, if the punk scene, which is another genre I really heavily listen to, is able to discuss a lot about like activism and what's going on and like politics and everything like that, why not the emo and pop punk scene? Sure, we're sad all the time, but there's got to be something that makes us sad that's relevant, and there is.
Yeah. I think it's, one thing that I've kind of noticed about sort of the resurgence and the new interest in emo music, in pop punk music, newer bands coming into the scene, older bands coming back. You remember, maybe you were too young, Warped Tour back in like 04, 05, when like a lot of these bands were, Mike Hem and Fall Out Boy were headlining Warped Tour, and well, actually no, they weren't headlining Warped Tour. That was the thing, is they were like
the little bands down there.
Yeah, we don't know how they're gonna do, and then
here they are.
It was crazy. But there were a lot of like Rock Against Bush albums that were out at that time. There were a lot of there's a lot more sort of awareness of the way of what the government was doing, of how it was affecting people, and it was trying to jumpstart some activism within that scene, within the people that were at these concerts. There were booths, there were CDs, there were albums, and obviously everybody was, giving the middle finger and saying like, hey, we don't like what you're doing. So I after Obama's election, I feel like that sort of wasn't as, there was still plenty of things to be active about, but I do feel that wasn't happening as much at these shows, where we were still addressing the issues, we were still talking about issues, but we obviously didn't have anything to rally against, to rail against, that was actively causing bad things to happen.
Right, exactly. But now I feel like we're back in a place where we have it and people are saying, I can't believe they're doing it, but they're not really doing much more.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very ironic because people say that, Ivanka Trump is being complicit, but it's also like a little bit vice versa back on us in certain senses. Yeah. I think that's as heavy as we're going to get. But just saying, this is what you have to look forward to if you want to have a dialogue and discussion about it and talk about emo music, which is wild. I know. Yeah. But here we are.
I think that this is going to show that it's okay to talk about these things no matter like kind of what community you're in. I'm hoping that we can have some interviews with people that are really doing things out there that are really like, people who have booths on Warped Tour talking about mental health and depression and trying to bring more awareness to it. People who are getting people to register to vote, and people who want the youth, us olds, to like
us oldies over here
to get to get on their feet and like actually do something about it. So much more now that things are in the news, in the media, people are much more aware of things. There is more reporting on these things that at one time, we would just sort of sweep under the rug.
Right.
So I think that I like the idea of this podcast being a place for, whether it's our community, however big the community is that we can all talk to one another. We can all bring awareness to these things as well. I just feel very strongly about that.
I feel like it's also worth to mention it's a safe space. So if we post this and people start to talk about it and comment about it, everyone's open to discussion. Obviously, everyone in this, in our subculture has different views. I know it's shocking. Not everyone has the same view as you. It's really wild. It's a really wild concept. But it's something that we're open to. Obviously, there's both sides of every conversation. I was on debate for a while, so I definitely know how to argue both sides of every conversation, even if I don't agree with it. However, just to stress that we're here to have an open conversation.
Yeah.
And like maybe cry.
So let's talk about Panic at the Disco.
Yes, you were able to go last night, which I'm very jelly about. None of my friends wanted to go after the last time we saw Panic, and they didn't like all the young screaming girls who didn't know A Fever You Can't Sweat Out.
Well, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
There was one song from Fever You Can't Sweat Out,
which we all know.
Yeah,
we all know.
I'm not too upset about that. I think overall, obviously every time Panic at the Disco puts out something new, every time Brendon Urie does something new, there's discussion about where he came from, the fact that it's only him in the band now, the fact that there are other musicians in the band, but he's writing everything, he's recording everything himself.
He's the face, obviously.
He's the face. So every time he does anything, every time he does an interview, every time that he's seen, everybody's asking him these questions or mentioning this stuff to him, and I'm kind of just like, hey, this is where we're at now. Like, let's stop. But I get it. Like, I personally am very attached to Fever You Can't Sweat Out. I did a video talking about the entire album with my friend Dashni on the Taking Back Emo page. And we did that was promotion for our show where we performed it from front to back, which was like, fantastic for me. I had a great time. The audience loved it, I hope, but I was having the best time. So, but that album means a lot to me. And I know that I can't go and see Panic at the Disco play a show and see all of those songs anymore. And
you can't also go to a venue as small as what you play at Sub T, right?
Yeah, that was at Beat Kitchen.
Beat Kitchen?
Yeah.
It's a very small venue.
Yeah, it's tiny. So, like, if I go to see Panic at the Disco now, I understand that I'm going to see Panic at the Disco now.
Exactly.
I also, there's I think it's weird that a lot of these bands are doing their old albums. They're doing like a tour where they're just playing the first or second album or whatever it is, like a 10-year one, or they do like some pop-up 10-year shows or whatever it is. I kind of think that it's strange for bands that are still writing new music, putting out new albums, to then always go back to the original album. Like, oh, we know that the fans like this. We know that the fans are there for this. But it's like, yeah, but you just wrote 2 more albums. So why would you only play?
A lot of it's marketing and just what's sellable at this point, because everyone who listened to those albums are old enough to have ideally like salary jobs where they can afford to spend that money. You do, yes. Isn't that nice to not be a young millennial, Brian?
Yep.
But that's usually what it is, and that's what people want to hear. They want to hear the bangers. They want to feel like they were when they were young, and nostalgia sells.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing at the moment is what people are looking for. I mean, that's why there's like emo versus pop punk nights.
Yeah.
Every Sunday usually here in Chicago, and they're playing old school pop punk, or like they're doing a Yellow Card tribute for all of Ocean Avenue.
Yeah.
So because people want to hear it, they want to relive their youth. They want to get drunk and relive their youth.
And I also then see, at the show last night, it was mostly like young girls and their moms or dads. It was mostly moms I saw. I'm like, that's
sort of, yeah.
There's a lot of moms.
A lot of moms are probably like, ooh, look at that Brendon Urie.
Sure, why not? He's my age and he looks so good. Anyway, so I'm seeing all of these like younger kids and I'm like, well, I don't know how old they were when Fever You Can't Sweat Out came out, but like
some of them were probably not even like born.
Yeah, so like they're either, super young or they'd been born after the album came out or whatever it is, and now their understanding of Panic at the Disco was their last 2 albums or their last 3 albums. Like that is who they know as Panic at the Disco. They know that there's other music out there and they've probably listened to it, but they've never been able to go and see a Panic at the Disco show and see the first album.
Right.
So if you go to a Panic at the Disco show now, that's all you're going to see, and that's what they're going to remember when they're however old we are, and they're going to get to that age and they're going to have whatever nights they have at bars where they're playing, we're playing the whole Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die album, and people are going to be like, that's awesome, I love that, and then people like us are going to be like, play Fever, and like
when I saw Paramore at Northern Lee Island, and I'm just forever screaming to the void for them to play Emergency again. Like when they did, when I saw them at the Final Riot tour at Congress Theater, 2009. And I know it's never going to happen again unless they do like a 10-year anniversary, reunion tour, which I don't think they are.
No.
But that's just me because I love those albums more so than more current stuff because I'm not super into like 80s pop. Sorry. I know that's like an unpopular opinion.
No, it's fair.
Whatever.
I do think that album is fantastic as well, but I also get the
I mean, I'll bop to After Laughter to some of the songs. I'm just, I'd rather, listen to All We Know or Riot like full blast 100% of the time.
And I mean, maybe it's like because Panic and Paramore are still putting out albums that get a little bit more acclaim. Like I'll throw it out there that The Used did a 10-year, 15-year, whatever it was for
In Love and Death
and for their self-titled.
Yeah.
So they did a tour where they literally did 2 nights and they played those 2 albums.
It was amazing.
But then you listen to their new album and it doesn't sound much like those, and I mean, I don't know how well it's done. I don't hear anybody like talking about it.
Right, but you have to remember the Used kind of like are also like a niche band for a lot of people nowadays. Like they'll listen to like, Box Full of Sharp Objects.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, cool, but sound effects and over dramatics. They're like, what's that? I'm like, did you never listen to In Love and Death, sir?
Like to me, those were the 2 albums that got them as big as they were. Like they sort of broke the mold on what emo, screamo, whatever it was. Like they paved the way for My Chemical Romance and bands to come after them. So then when they're doing their 10-year, I can only imagine it's because like maybe their newer albums aren't getting as much attention.
After they kind of came back, their newer albums were like, here's Ulysses, that's a 15-minute weird instrumental song, and no one really knew what was going on, but some people were into it. I mean, their newest album is pretty well. It kind of mixes everything together, I feel, from like their older sound and their newer sound. I really like it, but it's also kind of that, unfortunately, it's one of those albums you just put on in the background and just do whatever and kind of forget that it's playing, but you just want like noise in the background. But it is a good album.
Do you think that there's less bangers on it?
There is significantly less bangers on it.
It's a good album, but it lacks strong bangertude?
Yes. Like Over and Over Again is a pretty strong banger, but it's a too long of a banger.
Yeah.
And it's too repetitive.
Yeah,
and too long of a banger. It doesn't go together well.
Yeah, bangers have a certain limit of time. So, Panic at the Disco. Bring us back. So the show is great. I would say that if you've seen, I know they put out their last tour on YouTube. They put out like live video of the whole thing. They did a lot of that again. Like
that's what I've noticed from my friend's Snapchat.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like I was missing out too much, but I also just would have liked to have gone.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great show. Like if you enjoy great performers, if you enjoy, awesome lights and a huge stage show and all this stuff, I think that it's it's worth whatever money you can afford to go and get. Even like the big back, the back
the
of the stadium.
nosebleeds.
Yeah, like it's worth it.
That's where I sat last time, and it was great, except I was so excited, and we were by the balcony, that I was jumping so much, I almost fell over, and one of my friends had to straight up grab the back of my shirt and pull me back up, because I was like, this is how I die tonight, I guess.
Fall onto the stage.
During Panic at the Disco. What's up?
Yeah, I would say, like, it was a great show. I enjoyed it a lot. Maybe too much, but yeah, like I don't know. I think that Brendon Urie is sort of like our scene's hero right now. I don't know if that's because we don't have a ton, but he's been just doing so much, like in the media right now. His songs have been picked up for the hockey, the Stanley Cup, back when that was happening, when the album was just coming out. I saw they had a song played on the World Cup. So like he's, the songs are getting him places, and he's putting the music in a lot of places where people are going to hear it.
Right. It's sort of like he's the modern day Fall Out Boy when Fall Out Boy came back.
Yeah.
That's the equivalent right now,
Sure.
I feel.
Yeah. So yeah, he also has been doing, he did the Highest Hopes Foundation.
Right.
So he announced his own foundation to support, I think as he put it, like disenfranchised. He's donating $1 million to hold on, let me pull it up exactly. $1 million to GLSEN, the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network. So he is standing up for this issue that I think it's been more prevalent, but I don't think that we have had sort of like a hero from back in 2005 sort of in the media's eye as much as he's been since this album's been coming out, to really speak on these issues and to put his money where his mouth is and say, hey, I'm doing these things, I'm doing this for these people, and sort of just, I don't know, setting like a really good example for I don't know.
Well,
like
and I feel like Panic at the Disco is like a good like family band too. Like, weird to say. I mean, my dad loves Panic at the Disco. So, and like my entire family loves Panic at the Disco and Fall Out Boy. But I feel that it's also, you can like listen to it in the car with like your parents, and they're not going to be as offended. Where if you listen like to Yves in the car, your parents are going to be like, are you okay? What is this?
The screaming thing, yeah.
But I mean, it's the same thing. Like, and especially in this scene, we have people who are like, yeah, I'm clearly like for all these different issues, but they're not saying it outwardly. It's just inferred. Where you have in like the punk scene, you have Against Me's Laura Jane Grace, who came out as trans, and she's been like running forward with it and is very vocal about it. So I think it's like, it's really cool that we have that, and we have an individual to stand up for these different, issues in society, especially because Brendon Urie came out as pansexual, I think about a week ago as well.
Yeah.
So it's also bringing visibility to a lot of different like sexualities and other underground issues that we don't really speak about or like know much about either. So I think it's a really good conversation to start up on.
It seems like essentially it just takes somebody to say, I don't care if I lose fans because I stood up for people who aren't being stood up for as much. Like the idea that you would offend somebody by coming out as whatever sexuality you are, the idea that you would offend somebody by saying that I'm standing up for these kids that are, scared to say whatever sexuality they are. Like, I just think that there's nobody who is putting themselves out there to potentially lose some of their fans, to potentially lose some of their marketability or whatever it is. I mean, I think, right now he's probably doing something that is very natural for him, because he doesn't seem like the kind of person who's going to be like, I'm going to keep quiet, I'm going to worry about that.
Yeah, he's very vocal, very vibrant of a person.
So I think that it was just sort of time for him to just say, I am going to do this. This is who I am. This is how I want to live my life. This is how I want other people to live their lives. This is how I'm going to help everybody. And he's just like, I don't care if you don't like it. Like, that's just inevitably, I think that's maybe how we're going to sort of get through to some people who don't like it, is you don't have to like it, but it's not something that's going to affect you. The music still stands. The music exists. The music is what it is. I don't know. He was performing Girls, Boys, I think is the song title. I was confused it because it could be boys, girls, girls, girl, I mean, whatever. So he's performing that, and he had said originally it was not a song about sexuality. It wasn't a song about coming out. It wasn't a song for that. It was just a song about something that happened in his life. So for him to then turn it into that, everybody in the audience last night did the same thing where you put your camera phone light into a colored piece of paper and you hold it up while he's performing that song, which looked fantastic. That was incredible to see. But he wasn't writing for it specifically. So he's just writing the music as himself. He's writing the music for what he wants to write about. It just so happens that it's affecting people who are dealing with these issues, dealing with sexuality, dealing with coming out, and then he is sort of saying it's okay, and he is the one that's sort of pushing for this. And like, even if he's not doing it on purpose, the art stands as the art, and what people are taking away from it is something super positive that he didn't even intend. And I'm I don't know, it fills me with happiness that like people are ready to speak out, people are ready to stand up and say, no, I'm done with this, like this is how it is now.
Like, this is the 21st century. We're moving on.
Yeah, like I'm excited about that. I'm glad that someone's finally doing it.
Especially somebody who has such a huge image in the public sphere rather than just in our small little subculture.
Yeah,
it's like everyone knows who Brendon Urie is, or they've heard a Modern Panic at the Disco song.
No, yeah.
So that's also really cool. He's using that platform to his highest advantage to project these really positive messages.
Yeah. I like it. So, Chicago Warped Tour is this weekend. This is the final cross-country run of the Vans Warped Tour.
You better kill someone in the pit or something, or crowd kill, or start a fight. I don't know. Don't actually do that, because I don't want you to hurt anyone. That's all asphalt down there. That's not fun to fall on.
Don't murder. Don't
purposely injured.
So some of the bands that are playing this year, I pulled a short list of bands that I thought, kind of I recognize. The thing about it's like
that's really old of you to say.
No, it's like looking through, I'm like, final cross country run. I'm like, who are these people? Like, I've never seen some of these bands before.
I mean, Bowling for Soup's on there. I know they're not necessarily emo, but they slap.
They're also, I don't think they're playing Chicago
they are.
either. Oh,
it's their last state.
Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't pull that one then.
Wow.
My bad.
They were really good when I saw them with Screeching Weasel. That was a really cool show.
So some of the bands that are playing, 303, Mayday Parade, 4 Years Strong, Real Friends, Simple Plan, The Main, Tonight Alive, We the Kings, Every Time I Die, and then our Chicago friends in Harm's Way and Sleep on It. The lineup looks great considering that it's their final cross-country run. I know a lot of other bands have done some hop-ons, some hop-offs in other states. I know that there's still some people that are
being added here and there.
Yeah, it's just sort of like, hey, if you can make it, come on out, have a good time.
It's like, hey, is this gonna conflict with your fall touring schedule or nah?
Yeah.
If not, come through.
So I dig that. I'm kind of bummed that more of those aren't coming through.
I'm very upset that the Used weren't coming through here at all.
Yeah.
They weren't even on Riot Fest lineup.
No,
I was offended. Hashtag offended.
I was bummed that that Under Oath was only doing a couple shows, more in the southern states, but I know they're on Riot Fest in September, so we'll see them again. What do you think that they mean by the final cross-country run of Warped Tour? What do you think that means for them?
I think they're going to pick 1 to maybe 5 major cities, and they're going to plop it down in those. Like, remember how Riot Fest used to do 3 cities? They used to do, Toronto, Denver, and Chicago?
Yep.
And now it's only just Chicago. I think that's what it's going to end up being. And they're probably going to see how the maintenance on those so many shows go. And then I feel like they're probably going to condense it down. And I really feel like because the biggest pull that they have in a lot of their audiences is still in California, I feel in the end they'll end up staying in California and being like, this is our big Warped Tour every year. It'd be probably equivalent to like Riot Fest, I feel, in stance. And I really think that's what it's going to come to.
I think so. I agree that I think that they're just going to find somewhere to plop it down and just say, this is where we do this now. Probably change it from Warped Tour to like Warp Fest or something like that. Like
something that sounds right, I guess.
Yeah. But I remember kind of reading an article from Kevin Lyman when he announced that it was going to be the final cross-country run. And it just, the way that they're saying it, he just makes it sound like, hey, it costs a lot to like put up a tour that runs the entire U.S., that runs nationally, and trying to get enough bands on it to commit to it, especially when there are a ton of summer festivals that have popped up. There's all kinds of clauses that you have to sign when you're a band playing these festivals. I know Lollapalooza is really bad with their like radius clauses. Like you want to get acts that are not going to be performing anywhere nearby, so that their audience comes to see your festival. Exactly. So
unless you're doing an after show specifically for them, because I know last year, I remember my friend telling me there were some artists who was scheduled to do a show like I think a month before Lollapalooza, and they were on Lollapalooza, and suddenly they hopped off that list. And it was just saying, I can't legally do this. Yeah. And I didn't know I couldn't legally do this. Right. So I'm like, ooh, yikes.
So, I mean, if you have like a bunch of those festivals, because they're now like, I wouldn't say Lollapalooza style festivals everywhere, but I'd say like if Riot Fest is, you know, sort of the comparison, there are a bunch of different sort of rock festivals that pop up everywhere across the U.S., all during the summer, assuming that they all have some of those contracts. How can you get these large bands to play a national tour and make as much money as they would make in one day at this massive festival? And then you could also just do a festival circuit, because they all happen on different weekends. So rather than going, you know, one festival stop, you're just popping around all of them, playing these giant shows, playing to massive audiences. And I don't think Warped Tour can really compete with that anymore. And I think that that's maybe the way that the business is going, to where people want to go to these giant festivals that bring in the acts in their area. Warped Tour's bands are, you know, much smaller, much newer bands.
Right.
Not it's a bad thing. It is always been a place for newer bands to get their touring, get their touring started, get in front of some new audiences, get some new ears to listen to them. But I think in later years, it's like, well, I'm not going to go see this tour if there's no bands that I'm really going to enjoy.
Right.
If it's all new music, you're never going to bring in the same crowds you would if you had these large artists. I think that they've got some, you know, bigger artists on this year. I know that the way too many rumors about bringing back like Fall Out Boy or...
I feel like that's a lie, but if Fall Out Boy comes back for the Chicago date, you bet I'm going to be lined up.
They will not.
First person... Let's go. I'll fight you.
They will not.
I know.
I mean,
I could only dream.
Yeah, it's a nice thought. I just am like, it's clear that these bands have, you know, they had their opportunity on Warped Tour. They got where they were going. It's sort of time for some other bands to take that spotlight on the final Warped Tour, not to be overshadowed by a band that is way too big to be playing there.
Well, some of the notable bands we even have now that are starting to make a name for themselves pretty significant. At least we have like Sleep On It and Real Friends, some really big local acts that we have here in Chicago. And I mean, Real Friends just came out with a new single. They're coming out with their new album soon. And then Sleep On It just came out with their new album, Overexposed, just a few months ago. So I think the fact that a lot of that is picking up steam, and then a lot of other bands like Grayscale is also on Warped Tour, and they're really good. I personally think they're really good. They play Riot Fest last year, so I feel like the fact that they're also building up, and I feel that there's a lot of people in the DIY community starting to come through more into these festivals. It's also, I feel like that's also hindering it, because the whole DIY thing is obviously do it yourself. You don't do it through contracts and corporations. Right. You do it through... Yo, I'm going to come through and play with my band. You know, pay me some money. Can I get some beer?
Lot.
Cool.
I'll just follow you around. I'll be in the parking lot. We'll play out of the back of my van.
Basically.
I mean, I've thought about doing that back in the day when I was in an original band. Like, I'll just show up and start playing.
Like I'm here now.
I need ears. I think it was, there have been a couple bands that have legitimately done that for Warped Tour, and Kevin Lyman was like, yo, like, you can play on this stage at this time or something like that. Like, he like gave him an opportunity. So I guess overall, it is kind of a bummer that Warped Tour is ending. I do think that there's going to be something that they do, a fest in California, or like you said, a couple small cities, or a couple larger festivals in some different cities, not small cities. That'd be really pointless. Come on down to Saskatoon.
Where's that at?
Is that even no idea? It's the first small town name that came to my head.
Yikes.
I'm pretty sure it's real. I'm pretty sure. So, I think that they're going to just do, I think the cross-country line in there is obvious that they're going to do something. They're still going to keep the brand. They're still going to keep, the same idea. Yeah.
Fun facts.
Fun facts.
Are you planning to go to any of the dates?
So I'm not going to Chicago one. Taking Back Emo is playing a after show for Warped Tour.
Yeah, they are.
At Brower House in Lombard.
Starts at 10.
Information on our Facebook. I'm bad at plugs. So yeah, I won't be going to Chicago date. I'm going to Milwaukee for sure. I may go to Indianapolis. We'll see.
Joan Jett's playing Indianapolis.
Yeah, but so is Frank Turner, who's...
I love Frank Turner. I'm really upset that I'm hopping on a plane to go to Disney World that day now.
Damn.
I know.
Well...
I'm just so conflicted.
Yeah. I'm conflicted too, because it's like a 3-hour drive out to Noblesville, Indiana.
Yikes.
It's a long drive. We'll see. I might go. I might send you... some stories.
Let me cry. Why am I playing to Disney World? I'll get to Magic Kingdom and be like, wow, I'm crying in front of Cinderella's castle. Thank you.
It sounds like a great trip.
I know, right?
It's like really just miserable.
The true emo princess has arrived. I'll be going to Chicago date. So if you see a girl with combat boots with bats on them and a big bow in her hair, say hey, but don't be weird about it. I've had people do that. They'll come up to me and be like, I've seen you at different shows. I'm like, all right, let's not talk to people that way.
It's not how we talk. All right, well, that was the first episode of the Emo Social Club podcast.
I know it's a little rough. It'll be better next time.
This is our trial and error. Follow along with us because we are definitely going to be cataloging the process of doing a podcast.
So for all of you people who want to be like, I want to start a podcast, but I don't know what I'm going to do, here we go.
Yeah. We said the same thing an hour ago. So
and here we are.
Yeah. So that's our first episode. I'm Brian. You can find me on... I'll do Instagram because I'm way more prominent on Instagram. At SpookyPants1. Boom.
And this has been Lizzie. I am on Twitter and Instagram. Both are the same handles. It's at Borden Battery, like Lizzie Borden and Elizabeth Battery.
We'll put them down in the. We'll put it in the description as well. You can find us on there. Also, check out Taking Back Emo. We are playing after the Warped Tour on Saturday in Lombard, Illinois. All the details will be at Taking Back Emo on Facebook. And thanks for checking us out. Thanks for listening. And
stay tuned for what's forthcoming.
Yeah.
And get ready to talk and maybe cry. I hope you cry.
We hope you cry.
We hope you cry.
All right. See you later.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Emo Social Club Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world if you could subscribe and maybe drop a like down below, or even leave a comment and tell us what you thought. If you want to join the Emo Social Club, we can be found on Facebook and Instagram at Emo Social Club, and on Twitter at @EmoSocialClubX. You can also find the audio version of this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you in the next one.